get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on WNJC.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here, flying solo tonight. And so glad you can join me on this great evening here in the People's Republic of New York City. As we tape this show, we are going to be breaking down the results of the Wisconsin primary, what it means not only for the 42 delegates that are in Wisconsin, but also what it means going forward in this race, and looking towards the convention as well. Then later on, we're going to be talking to Dan Gainor from Media Research Center and NewsBusters about the latest goings on in the news and what Hollywood and the devil seem to have in common lately. I'm just as interested as you are right now about that. But first, let's turn our attention to Wisconsin. And no, it's not a Packers game that's on right now. What we're seeing as we tape this show is Senator Ted Cruz has taken the state of Wisconsin, the extent of which we don't know as far as delegates. 42 at stake. When you win statewide, you get 15. Then it's broken down by a couple of winner-take-all by the congressional race. But we can say that Senator Cruz has won the day, at least for the statewide race, breaking the 50% barrier as we record this right now. Donald Trump in second place, barely breaking 30%. He's hovering between 28 and 30 as the night progresses here. And John Kasich is nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. But I'm going to be talking about later why, if you are never Trump, hashtag never Trump, you want John Kasich to stay in this race. And if you're a Ted Cruz supporter, why Marco Rubio might be your best friend come July. But let's just start breaking down what we're seeing tonight. We're seeing what appears to be a big win for Ted Cruz. Not big in delegates, although he's gaining on delegates with every race lately. We're seeing Ted Cruz turning the tide. Can Wisconsin be considered a turning point? I think it can be. I mean, let's face it. Donald Trump had some of the worst weeks of his campaign as we led up into Wisconsin. And because we only had one state going on, it felt like the cycle was slowing down a little bit. A little more focused, a little more contemplative. We're not doing the Super Tuesday stuff anymore, at least not this week. We may be doing it in the Mid-Atlantic very soon. But it feels like everything is moving at a better pace. Wisconsin doesn't exactly seem to be Ted Cruz territory. But it may be the best example of what an organized, centrally run, dare I say, establishment Republican Party can do when motivated and all oars are going in the same direction. You got to remember, Wisconsin, the home of Scott Walker, the home of recall votes and fighting unions. This is a battle-hardened county and state organization, especially in the southeast of the state, the so-called WOW counties. This is not your typical state GOP organization. This is a group that has seen some battles and have won some battles and know how to pull out the vote for whomever their guy may be. And when Governor Walker goes out and says, "This is my guy," you got to believe that's going to be useful to that candidate. And in this case, it was Senator Cruz. Now add on to that the fact that nationally, the GOP race has turned into the Jerry Springer show. You hear the chants as well as I do in the background. There's a studio audience now involved with everybody cheering in the background. You hear them as we speak here. And, it's turned into who talked about my wife first, and talking about people's manhood and the size of their hands and all this stuff. Obviously, that didn't fly with the good people of Wisconsin. Ted Cruz over 50% because he had a solid operation backed by a solid operation. Donald Trump may be in disarray when it comes to organizational stuff right now. It certainly feels that way, and it certainly seems that way. Ted Cruz went on stage tonight and said, this is a turning point. This is our rallying cry. Now you have a real choice. And that may well be the narrative going forward. You also saw a very conciliatory Ted Cruz on the stage talking about unity and peace amongst the party and pointing to the fact that sitting at his table right now and basically are endorsing him, people from Rick Perry, Scott Walker, Lindsey Graham, Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina, all at the same table with Ted Cruz. Now, let me ask you something, folks. At the start of this entire whole debacle of a race, did you ever think that you would see Ted Cruz and Jeb exclamation point sit at the same table? Did you ever think that Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz would ever be working together? Of course not. Politics makes for strange bedfellows when you're looking at a populist wave that is Donald Trump. Now, let's give Donald a little bit of credit. He had the worst 2-3 weeks of any campaign that I've ever seen. From going after Heidi Cruz, to implications about the National Enquirer story, to the arrest of his campaign manager, to the comments he made about abortion. And yet, he still has a solid base of no less than 30% of the state of Wisconsin voting for him. That's got to tell you how rock solid Trump's base is. The question about Donald Trump has never been about how rock solid his base is. That's been established through and over again. State to state to state, you see increased voter turnout. And again, here in Wisconsin, 40% voter turnout, the highest since 1980, they're saying. You remember who ran and won in 1980, right? Yeah, I know you do. Highest turnout, and we've seen that throughout many states. I mean, South Carolina had 125,000 new voters. I'm not talking about, a small amount here. 125,000 new voters. We always talk about growing the big tent. Donald Trump has grown a pretty sizable tent, but the question is, did he grow a tent so big that it knocked out most of the Republican Party? Time will tell on that, but clearly not a good night for Donald Trump. But good times are yet to come for the Donald. He's got the People's Republic of New York coming up next week. If we know anything about New York, it's Trump territory. His name's just about on every building. We'll see what happens there. I think we're calling for a big Donald Trump victory there. And, the mid-Atlantic states are probably going to be for him. Good news coming for Donald Trump. He probably weathered his worst week. He's heading towards a new beginning. Dare I say, with WrestleMania just passed us, we're heading towards a new day for Donald Trump. And New York will be a rebound for him. Ted Cruz probably won't get any traction. I mean, talking about New York values. Even though he's right about those New York values. $15 minimum wage coming at you in New York City. And, masturbation booths on 5th and 28th Street in New York City. And mayors telling their children to be wary of the police in New York City. That's what he's up against in the majority of the voting here. The big question coming to New York is going to be on the other side of the aisle, and we'll be talking about Bernie Sanders and his campaign that keeps on winning but apparently can't win later on. But Donald Trump is locked into one strategy. It's win or go home. Donald needs that magic number of 1237. That is his road to victory. He is not going to be the guy who's going to be brokering at the convention. It's just not going to happen. Don't see it happening at all. Trump's own delegates may not want to stick with him, let alone bringing delegates over to his side. Trump's on the road to 1237. Can he get there? Your guess is as good as mine. We'll be talking about that also a little later on and talking about how Donald Trump probably won't be the nominee if we get to a broker convention. Many are saying that. And what can be done to get delegates that belong to other people right now. We'll see what happens there. But let's talk about, the human dynamo himself. The man that just keeps on going no matter how much you want him to go away. And that's John Kasich. John Kasich, in a Midwest/Western state, whatever you want to call Wisconsin, Pacific Northwest. No, it's not Pacific Northwest, it's just Northwest. Remember that whole thing in history class, guys, when they would talk about this is Northwestern United States, and it was like Wisconsin and Minnesota. And then when, Manifest Destiny, we kept moving west, we decided to keep that as Northwest and call it Pacific Northwest, where Washington and Oregon is. Yeah, I just did that. So, John Kasich obviously not having a good night. Not even breaking 15% from what I'm seeing as I'm currently here with you guys. Not his night in the slightest, but there may be some good times to come for John Kasich. The question with him, though, is how long until Republicans get so upset with him, get so bitter towards him, get so negative towards the view of his campaign that he has to leave the race. And you know what? You never Trump people, you may not want John Kasich to leave the race. John Kasich is going to be Donald Trump's bigger adversary in the Northeast as the Mid-Atlantic states come out. You're going to see, Ted Cruz is not going to have strength there. Ted Cruz's strength is in Midwest and Western states. And, as we bat back and forth between East Coast, West Coast, I feel like I'm talking about gangster rap. But as we go back and forth between East Coast and West Coast, there's a different battle for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's fighting a two-front war. And whether Donald Trump can maintain that two-front war, we'll have to see. Go into the chat room right now. We got a live chat during these shows when we broadcast on Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on Spreaker, here live. And just checking in with some of the comments. People are saying if Trump is within 100 delegates, the, quote, Vichy Republicans will flip. He can offer these people something and clinch the nomination. I'm not so sure about that. I think if Trump is within 100 delegates, you may see delegates getting released by candidates who have them. I mean, do we all know who's running third place right now? Oh, yeah, it's Marco Rubio, the guy whose campaign is over with. Marco Rubio has delegates that could be significant if it is within 100 delegates between Trump and Cruz. What if Rubio decides to release those delegates? We don't know what's going to happen there. Another comment in the chat saying that if Trump's at 1150 or more, you can't deny him, but let's be honest. If it goes to a second ballot, who knows what will happen there, we're all talking out of our you-know-whats. Pretty much right, but here's what you're missing, guys and gals. The first ballot, yes, we'll go by the numbers. Second ballot, some of the delegates get released, but not all of them. There may be a third ballot, and that's when the real horse trading is going to start. What we're seeing right now is Wisconsin setting the stage for this battle in Cleveland. This has been the microcosm of the battle in Cleveland. Voter tastes are turning as we've gotten down to fewer and fewer candidates, and the field's not as diluted. You remember back in the day when third place used to be a win? Remember those days early on in the cycle? Third place is not a win anymore. Third place is dead dog. What we're seeing as the campaign is going to be shifting from Wisconsin to the People's Republic of New York, the home of the $15 minimum wage, the home of New York values, you're going to start seeing certain delegates and certain counts in certain states are going to be, you might as well just already count them. Once you get rid of those counts, and we head towards June 7th, Gene's birthday, by the way, is when everything gets decided if California is still up for grabs. You're going to start seeing this race not only getting tighter and tighter, depending on what coast you are, between either Trump and Kasich or Trump and Cruz. You're going to be seeing a very, very anxious and pensive Republican leadership as we head into what may be a more important period than the primary period. The horse trading period, as one coined it in the chat room. The 6 weeks between close of primaries and opening of convention. That's going to be a big deal. Some more comments in the chat room saying there are people out there who are arguing that no delegates are bound on the first ballot. Some guy who served on the Rules Committee has been arguing this for years. Again, there is a Rules Committee that is convening. And they will be talking about getting rid of the well-known Rule 40, about having a certain number of states in your victory column in order to